Brittney Griner is playing a game, and this is what Brittney Griner calls. I was not going to comment on any of this stuff until this took place. Watch what she says. The entire internet has reacted to this. Here's Brittney Griner. They're playing against the Indiana Fever, and look what she's saying. Go ahead, Rob.
Or the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier.
Patrick Bet-David just dropped straight fire on Brittney Griner. And honestly, the internet is losing its mind. The Valuetainment founder didn't pull any punches after seeing that viral clip of Griner talking about Caitlin Clark.
The ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
And what he said next, let's just say, it set social media on fire. Now, people can't stop talking about it, and Brittney might be wishing she'd never even stepped on that court. So here's the question.
Well, that pretty much sounds like trash effing white girl.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest.
So the whole market reacts to this. With
Folks, Patrick Bet-David just dropped one of the most savage takedowns in sports media history. And let's be real, Brittney Griner's probably still picking her jaw up off the floor. The entrepreneur and media powerhouse didn't just call her out. He completely dismantled her after that viral clip made the rounds. And when I say he didn't hold back, I mean, he went all in. But this wasn't just your average sports critique. This was a full-blown demolition job. One that called out what he sees as everything wrong with the WNBA's current culture. So, what set PBD off? It all started with what looked like a pretty standard basketball play between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. But as Bet-David pointed out, it snowballed into something way bigger. And
by Autumn Johnson.
BG, right now you have 10 points, 5 rebounds. We see the Atlanta Dream as being very... Right now she's talking to the refs about holding. We're going to send it back to you guys.
Very important questions.
And honestly, way more absurd. Here's how it unfolded. Reese shoved one of Clark's teammates. Clark responded with a foul. And then Reese went down like she'd just been hit by a sniper. What PBD jokingly called a classic LeBron flop. But then, things got out of hand fast. Instead of chalking it up to typical on-court drama, certain media voices jumped in and made it all about race. DeMarcus Cousins claimed Clark was getting protected because she's white. Angel Reese made her own heated comments. And then, here's where PBD really lost it. Jamili Hill stepped in with what he called one of the wildest takes in sports history. She actually compared Angel Reese to Michael Jordan. Let that sit for a second. A player shooting just 22, 7% from the field, which might be the worst in WNBA.
To being able to read the expressions of a person and know their intent, know their character, know their perspective. But he does understand hate because I think he also understands the hate of self. When you look at the play, which is all we can speak to as professionals, all we can speak to as analysts. Angel Reese.
In history, being compared to the GOAT, the greatest to ever play the game. Bet-David couldn't believe it. And honestly, neither could anyone watching with even half a brain. But the foolishness didn't end there. Ryan Clark, the ESPN analyst, chose to jump into the mix by criticizing RG3 for backing Caitlin Clark. And this is where things went completely off the rails. Clark actually claimed that RG3's perspective was irrelevant because he's married to a white woman. Yes, you heard that correctly. A prominent sports broadcaster implied that a black man's views on racial matters are invalid simply because of his choice in a life partner. Patrick Bet-David was stunned when he played that clip. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that someone would say something so regressive and divisive on national television. The idea that Ryan Clark believes a person's credibility on race is defined by who they marry.
Fouled out at 6, and it was the ticky-tack fouls, and again, Caitlin Clark doing a little bit of an acting job. Not sure if that was actually a foul, but again, that's for the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier.
Shows just how distorted the conversation surrounding women's basketball has become. But all of that drama was merely a prelude to the main incident. That's when a video surfaced showing Brittney Griner after she fouled out during a game against the Indiana Fever. The audio clearly captured what sounded like her saying, "Trash effing white girl." And that's when Patrick Bet-David completely lost his composure. PBD didn't hold back when addressing what he heard. He plainly stated that it sounded exactly like trash effing white girl and labeled it for what it was: a racially loaded remark from someone who should absolutely know better. But Bet-David wasn't finished. Not even close. What truly pushed him over the edge was the blatant double standards and sense of entitlement Griner displayed. Here's an athlete who was literally exchanged for a Russian arms trafficker, known as the Merchant of Death. And this is how she expresses her appreciation.
Said about the NBA. This is so funny how all this stuff works out, right? She says, this is from Brittney. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there, watching on purpose. It's very disruptive. It's called a freaking game that they pay you money to play. Don't play the game.
By making racially offensive remarks toward the very player who is single-handedly breathing life back into the WNBA. Bet-David went all in on that point. He reminded everyone that the US government gave up Victor Bout, one of the most dangerous weapons dealers in the world, to secure Griner's release from Russian custody.
Brittney Griner voiced frustration in a recent interview, claiming that Caitlin Clark is ruining what used to make the WNBA great. Wait for this.
Empty stands?
Tom, let me just...
Go ahead, I'm so mad.
WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now, it's like there's a large gathering of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score like we're there for their entertainment. And that's pretty gross.
Well,
Are you
I act like this.
Okay.
Rob, can you verify that this is what she said on the mom and pop WNBA model? That she's sick of the and then she says, the whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either about my performance or some light racism.
That's the extent of the effort and sacrifice made for her liberty. And how does she respond? By turning around and directing incendiary comments at a fellow American player who's generating unmatched attention and financial uplift for their league. But Patrick Bet-David wasn't done highlighting the absurdity of Griner's conduct. He went on to share a few alleged remarks from Griner, where she appeared to be complaining about having real fans in the arena. According to these reported statements, Griner was irritated that thousands of spectators were attending the games and genuinely focusing on what was taking place on the court.
Adam, I'm going to piggyback off of Adam because Adam's been saying this for a while, that this is why the WNBA is never, ever, ever going to work and never make money. And this is exactly what Caitlin Clark gets for bending the knee. Do you guys remember when she said, when we lost all respect for her, when she said, I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. And the more we can elevate black women, this is going to be a beautiful thing. That's when it was all over. And Angel Reese and Brittney Griner, they walk around like the league owes them something. Even Ryan Clark's attitude as if, bro, where's the victimhood? These are freaking millionaires. Like, what are you talking about? It's attitude, it's no humility, just entitlement, and that's not confidence.
The quotes were so absurd, they almost sounded like a parody. Griner had allegedly griped that WNBA games used to be calm, quiet environments where you could bring a laptop, unwind, and maybe even get some work done. She supposedly claimed that fans shouting and cheering were creating unreasonable pressure to score, like the players were suddenly expected to perform for the crowd's amusement. Although these quotes were later revealed to be satirical, Patrick Bet-David's response captured the exact sense of entitlement that many WNBA players have come to represent. The notion that professional athletes would complain about having engaged fans who actually care about the game is so backward, it borders on the unbelievable. But PBD used those quotes to highlight a larger issue with the culture in the WNBA. He emphasized that rather than showing appreciation for the attention and financial boost Caitlin Clark has brought to the league, players like Griner and Angel, Reese behave as if the league is somehow indebted to them. Instead of showing the humility and professionalism expected from top-tier athletes, they exhibit what he described as arrogance and entitlement. Patrick Bet-David completely dismantled the victimhood mindset that has taken root in the WNBA. He pointed out the irony of millionaire athletes complaining about racism and injustice while playing in a league that loses tens of millions of dollars annually. These players are being financially supported by the NBA, backed by major corporate sponsors, and promoted heavily by mainstream media.
Brittney Griner is playing a game, and this is what Brittney Griner calls. I was not going to comment on any of this stuff until this took place. Watch what she says. The entire internet has reacted to this. Here's Brittney Griner. They're playing against the Indiana Fever, and look what she's saying. Go ahead, Rob.
For the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
That pretty much sounds like trash effing.
Yet they still portray themselves as victims. The Valuetainment founder was especially harsh in his critique, arguing that this mentality is sabotaging the league's potential. He stated that the WNBA began underwater, and rather than patching the leaks, they're just punching more holes in the boat. And that's exactly what's happening. They have a once-in-a-generation talent in Caitlin Clark, who could transform the sport. But instead of seizing the moment, they're too preoccupied with playing the victim to take advantage of the opportunity. PBD didn't stop there either. He had more to say. He also called out the broader media narrative that shields players like Griner and Reese while targeting Clark. PBD noted that Clark actually harmed her own position by trying to appease critics, making comments about white privilege instead of simply focusing on her game. When she attempted to win favor by speaking about uplifting black women, it didn't appease anyone. In fact, it only made her appear vulnerable. This is where Patrick Bet-David's business insight really came through. He understands that successful organizations don't reward entitlement or victimhood. They reward performance and professionalism. The WNBA, on the other hand, has been doing the opposite, defending underperforming players while criticizing the one athlete who's genuine.
Effing white girl.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest.
So the whole market reacts to this with Brittney Griner, right? And then the other quote, Rob, then I'm going to wrap this up and then I'm going to go to Adam. Put the quote of Brittney Griner, what she said about the NBA. This is so funny how all this stuff works out, right? She says, this is from Brittney. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there, watching on purpose. It's very disruptive. It's called a freaking game that they pay you money to play. Don't play the game.
Angel Reese really underscored this entire issue. Here's a player shooting just 22.7% from the field, potentially one of the worst shooting percentages in WNBA history. Yet she's being protected and elevated, while Caitlin Clark is under constant scrutiny. Reese hits only 43.8% of her shots within 5 feet of the basket, meaning she struggles to even make layups with consistency. Patrick Bet-David highlighted the absurdity of comparing someone to Michael Jordan when they can't reliably score from point-blank range. He pointed out that even Karl Anthony Towns, often criticized for inconsistency in the NBA, would likely be offended by being compared to Angel Reese based on her current level of play. But PBD's most cutting argument came next. He then turned to the long-term impact of this behavior, predicting that if Caitlin Clark ever got injured or took time off, the league would quickly realize just how much it relies on her for viewership and revenue. He claimed that ratings and attendance would plummet, clearly revealing that none of the other so-called stars, individually or combined, can match the level of attention Clark brings on her own. That prediction turned out to be eerily accurate when it was later announced that Clark would be sidelined for 2 weeks due to an injury. Patrick Bet-David responded, "Good, let's see what happens to viewership," fully aware that it would expose the league's total dependency on its only genuine draw. Other WNBA players can continue to complain about being underappreciated, but the market will ultimately reveal the reality of their actual value. Bet-David also made a compelling... Patrick Bet-David drew a striking comparison between Caitlin Clark and Jackie Robinson. He suggested that Clark could become the Jackie Robinson of the WNBA, not because she's breaking racial barriers in the traditional sense.
NBA that they cannot handle all this attention that they're getting, as well as the hate and anger towards Caitlin Clark.
First things first. Respectfully. Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody...
But because she's the first white superstar in a predominantly black league and is facing resistance from within her own sport. The irony of this comparison is powerful. Jackie Robinson endured racism from outside the world of baseball while elevating the game with his talent and presence. Caitlin Clark, on the other hand, is facing animosity from inside the basketball community, even as she's bringing unprecedented attention and revenue to women's sports. Both Clark and Robinson faced resistance for challenging the established order, but there's no denying that both were ultimately a benefit to their respective games. Patrick Bet-David's breakdown of the media's role in this situation was especially sharp. He called out commentators like Ryan Clark and Jamela Hill for focusing more on pushing racial narratives than on actually discussing basketball. Instead of highlighting the remarkable talent and competition in women's basketball,
Body who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to complain about. Especially something like this. Fans in every sport. She described the fans.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what sport you are. It doesn't matter what sport you pick.
they're stirring up artificial controversies and generating outrage. PBD also pointed to the hypocrisy in the WNBA's entire business model. The league loses tens of millions of dollars each year and relies entirely on NBA subsidies just to stay afloat. Yet players like Griner still complain about fans actually showing up and watching the games. It's as absurd as a business owner complaining that customers are ruining their store by wanting to buy something. As the founder of Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David brings a business-oriented perspective to the conversation. He understands that successful ventures must prioritize what truly creates value, not what simply makes people feel good. The WNBA, he argues, has been putting emotions over outcomes, and that's a big reason why the league continues to struggle financially despite having real talent on the court.
That's how fans act in every arena. In every arena. So, and then when you, clearly she's not remembering who they let out to get her back.
The
on
Merchant
American
of
soil.
Death.
The Merchant of Death. An arms dealer that wanted to kill American citizens, according to the reports. That's who they let out. For her.
Bet-David also took aim at the broader cultural issues infecting professional sports. He pointed out that the NBA is dealing with similar problems, citing players like LeBron James, who have taken stances that are anti-police, anti-American, and pro-China. When leagues prioritize political messaging over entertaining basketball, they inevitably lose fans and revenue. This trend is especially harmful because it alienates the exact audiences they need to grow. Families who just want to enjoy the game together and casual viewers who are looking for fun, not a lecture on social justice. Sports lose their appeal when they turn into political theater. Patrick Bet-David's critique of Caitlin Clark's response to the controversy was also right on target. He pointed out that when Clark made comments about white privilege and uplifting,
for putting them through that, for going through those types of accusations. I mean, those are awful accusations. They weren't true. The fans weren't shouting racial slurs toward Angel Reese or opposing players. I mean, where is Caitlin Clark? Where is the Indiana Fever? Where is the WNBA saying that investigation there shouldn't have been an investigation? The allegations were
black women. She was trying to win over critics who were never going to be satisfied in the first place. Rather than staying focused on what made her unique as a player, she got dragged into racial politics that had nothing to do with her game. This strategic misstep cost her credibility with both sides. Her critics dismissed her efforts, while her supporters felt let down by her need to apologize for her success. It was a textbook case of how engaging in racial politics.
Were false. Where's the apology? It hasn't happened. It's disappointing. As someone who is, my daughters are fans of the team. They've gone to games to see Caitlin Clark. It's so demeaning to our state and to the fan base to go through.
Rarely benefits anyone, especially athletes who should be focused on their performance, not politics. The broader takeaway from Patrick Bet-David's analysis is clear. In professional sports, merit should outweigh identity. The WNBA has a real opportunity to build something meaningful around truly skilled players like Caitlin Clark. But instead of seizing that moment, the league is undermining itself by elevating racial narratives over actual basketball achievement. PBD's prediction about the league's viewership during Clark's absence due to injury will serve as the ultimate test of his argument, whether or not the WNBA can stand on its own without the one player truly driving its momentum.
Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever are the best gift that the WNBA has ever had. I mean, and the fans that show up and pack that place, I mean, sell out crowds every time Caitlin Clark plays. It's so great for Indiana, but it's good for the WNBA. But how dare you accuse our fans, the Hoosiers that show up at these games, being racist when they're not? I mean, that was an opposing player who.
If viewership numbers nosedive during Caitlin Clark's absence, it will confirm what many have suspected, that the WNBA's other stars are far less valuable than they've been made out to be. If the league continues to ignore this reality, it will keep struggling financially while alienating the very audiences it needs to survive. Patrick Bet-David's critique of Brittney Griner and the WNBA's dysfunction was harsh, but necessary.
Who hates Caitlin Clark. Frankly, it's a great rivalry for the teams and for the sport, but don't accuse our fans of being racist. I mean, that's the kind of garbage that gets thrown around all the time. It wasn't true. The investigation proved it. And there was no outcome of it. There was no apology. Apologize to the fans. I mean, that's a simple thing to do. And I wish the team would have been more emphatic about that. Stand up, stick up for your fan base.
Someone had to call out the entitlement, hypocrisy, and self-sabotaging mindset that's holding women's basketball back from reaching its true potential. And PBD did exactly that. His blunt, no-nonsense breakdown served as a much-needed reality. Check for Griner and the league as a whole. His analysis exposed the internal flaws that are quietly eating away at the sport from the inside. What did you think of Patrick Bet-David's takedown? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more raw, unfiltered sports commentary.